Welcome to the Insomnia Project. Sit back, relax, and listen as we have a calm conversation meant to help ease your evening and help you find your way to sleep, hopefully. Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Marco Timpano.
And with him, almost as always, I'm Amanda. Hi.
Hey, Amanda, how you doing?
Tired.
Amanda is tired. We just got back from a short little vacation. And the time difference wasn't much, but for some reason we both got
I'm zonked.
Zonked by it.
Well, it was the 2-hour time difference, and also we took a red eye.
Oh, the red eye.
And I was fine after the red eye, but I think it's now
Catching up to you.
a day or two later. I guess a day later? 2 days later, catching up to me, yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to know what our listeners do to catch up on sleep or to get back to the swing of things when they come home on a red eye. We haven't done a red eye in a long time. That's Amanda yawning in the background in case you hear it.
Excuse me.
I asked her, I said, do you have time to do a podcast? And she said, yes, before I start work, I will do the podcast. But she's like, just know that I'm still zonked. But I'm like, you know what?
But that might be what you want. You want that energy.
Sure.
Maybe.
A little zonked energy.
Mm-hmm.
Today I woke up and I was not so zonked. I was full of vim and vigor.
And yesterday, I think we were the opposite, right?
I think
yeah,
so.
because I woke up very early yesterday. But the weather is cloudy. I love this time of year.
You do love this time of
I
year.
love
I
it.
don't.
I love. Oh, you don't love it?
No, I'm not a big spring getting into
I
warm
love.
weather.
I love like the leaves are fully on, so everything is feeling lush and green finally. But the weather is cloudy and a bit stormy,
Sure.
but it's still warm, and that's. I mean, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I love a thunderstorm in general.
Yeah.
So this is my kind of, it's not, we're not quite into the heat of thunderstorms, but.
What about a thunderstorm near the ocean while you're in a lighthouse?
I mean, if I felt safe and warm and cuddly, then yes. And a
was
book and a duvet and a glass and a little cup of tea. Sign me up.
I was just trying to bring you to your
Happy place?
New England roots is what I was trying to do.
I think for that scenario, a little bit more cloudy and spitting than thunderstorm.
I see. Okay.
Maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
I asked Amanda if she could make me a coffee before we came down, and you made me a most delicious cappuccino instead, and I'm quite happy.
You wanted what you call your afternoon coffee, even though I have to point out it's not the afternoon for us right now. But,
No.
And so I instinctively and by road, I guess, made a cappuccino. And I was actually looking at it going, wow, this came out perfectly for him. And then realized that's not what you had asked for,
It's true.
but it's what you got.
And there you go. Well, we should talk about our trip because we just mentioned we got back from a trip. So
Yeah.
we should mention that what we did on the trip. Of course, Amanda and I love to travel. If you've listened to past episodes, you've heard of our many trips. And oftentimes that happens for work. And this kind of is a work trip as well, or was a work trip as well, because we had two main purposes for this trip.
Mm-hmm. That's
And
true.
one was to see a play that was being put on by,
What, the theater company?
yeah,
One Yellow Rabbit,
mm-hmm.
and they have a festival. So that's a theater company, One Yellow Rabbit, I believe is the
Right.
name of it. And they have a theater festival called the High Performance Rodeo that they do every year, which is a series of one-act plays, I believe.
Right.
Maybe it's two-act, but this one was one act.
And that brought us to Calgary, Alberta.
Mm-hmm.
And Amanda had never been to Alberta before. And I had said to her, I've never had a bad time when I'm in Alberta. I've
And
always had a great time.
I have to say, some cities and places audition well. And that's a term we use a lot on set when we're trying out, like when we're looking at a frame and saying, would this chair go well here? Or would this, should we move the sink or whatever we're setting up on set? And we'll say, well, let's audition the chair and see what it looks like.
See, I've never heard this before.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
Now that I've said it, next time you're on set, you'll hear it.
Sure.
Maybe it's just being used. Obviously, audition means, what we
Test
do.
out, yeah, sure.
What we do as actors, too. But I was just in Calgary thinking, some cities audition well and that you spend a few days in them and fall absolutely in love with them. And that was the case for me.
Mm-hmm.
I came back glowing from Alberta. I just loved it. It was a very short trip, but we are big believers in the short trip.
A lot of people say, why would you bother going if you're just going for 3 or 4 days? And, spending that time getting ready, going in the airport and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But we went for, what was it, 4 days, Amanda?
Yeah, we flew in on a Friday, really afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
I think we left at 1, which was lovely because we could take our time and get to the airport in the morning and have lots of time, which
Sure.
we had. And of course, when you give yourself lots of time, you don't need it, but that's
Mm-hmm.
fine. So we did that. We left in the afternoon, and then we got there because there's a time difference in
Right.
the afternoon. So we left at 1 and got there at 3, even though it was a longer flight than that. And then we went and should we just talk about?
Well, first I want to say I'm very proud of myself because I was able to pack judiciously
Mm-hmm.
and only in a carry-on.
Yeah, same.
And I was like, I'm going to bring 1 pair of long pants. And I had, for some reason, thought a lot of shorts would serve me well.
Well, it was warm, and it was set to be warm.
Amanda kept telling me, it's going to be warm.
I was looking at the numbers. They suggested warmth.
But I should know better because I've been to Alberta and the weather can really change
It's
on a dime.
windy. So those in the States, sort of I don't know if you've ever been to, I'm told, Montana, Idaho, that kind of weather where it's, in fact, some of the TV we were getting there was out of Washington State.
Right.
I didn't realize we were that far west, but I guess we were. So it's that sort of mountainous windiness. So it can be very sunny, but also cool because of the wind or just the altitude. Yeah.
Sure. And so I packed just in the carry-on, and it was so nice because we got off the plane and got to our destination, got our car. And
I love packing judiciously. I really do. I love having just a few things and knowing that you're actually going to wear everything and some things twice, but that's all you get and that's all you have. There's something I really love about that. We have another trip, which we may or may not take coming up. We're trying to figure out some things. But the plan for that trip, whenever we will take it, it's just a matter of when. But the plan for that trip is that we will have only our personal items.
Right. Not even a carry-on
Because
luggage.
of the flights. It's one of those cheap airfares that will mark it up if you start bringing on things. So I looked up the measurements for personal items. We talked about this a few episodes ago.
Amanda bought a specific backpack.
That'll fit all for the personal. So not even the carry-on, but because they charge you for carry-on on that carrier or airline. So just the personal items. So that'll be the real test of, I think that's a trip where you don't bring your computer. You just bring in a tablet and
Right.
or a big book. Like I realized having a novel with me, like a physical book, which I didn't read, so it was a waste, is too much.
Right.
When I travel, it's got to just go on my iPad and an e-book version, and that's going to have to be what it is, yeah. Even though I prefer the physical book.
Yeah.
So we'll see about that. But we did. We packed really judicious. I mean, it was only 4 days, so you can.
I wore everything but 1 T-shirt and 1 pair of shorts.
I wore everything and then washed my underwear, and it was dry enough that it dried in the hotel room, and re-wore it, and I wore many things twice.
We stayed in a tiny house while we were in Calgary. First of all, Calgary, such a wonderful city. I have never had a bad meal in Calgary, and I was telling our friends that, and I was like, every time I come to Calgary, and now I can say Alberta, to be honest with you, because same was true when I was in Edmonton, and for the first time...
You went to Edmonton?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
The last time I was in Calgary, I did Edmonton as well.
Yeah, that's a while ago without me.
Yeah, that was specifically for work that I was doing, so they flew us from Calgary to
So we should talk about our itinerary just so people can follow along if they want to follow along.
Of course.
So we did the first sort of afternoon, evening in Calgary, and then the next full day in Calgary, spent the night in Calgary. And then the next day, so that was Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday in Banff, Alberta, which is not easy to say. You want to put an M in it, but it's Banff for those who don't know that area. So we went to Banff, Alberta.
With a little side detour to BC.
That's true. We'll get to that. We didn't know we were going to BC, but that happened. Anyway, so we went to Banff on the Sunday, stayed overnight, and then had all day Monday in Banff, and then took the red eye out of Calgary that night.
Right.
So that was our trip. So essentially kind of a day and a half in Calgary, a day and a half in Banff, give or take. A little bit more than that, really. So yeah. So we flew into Calgary on the Friday, and we immediately went to our tiny house that we had rented.
So we rented a tiny house because, as you may know, for people who've listened to the podcast, Amanda has a fascination with tiny homes and living in vans, which I am not
And
on the same
this
page.
trip served it
And so,
in some ways.
So when the opportunity came to stay in a tiny home, or sorry, that was me banging the table, or going
That's me with my coffee.
to stay in a hotel, I said, let's stay in a tiny home so Amanda could really experience the tiny home, because it's been
I have
something.
to say, it was also the most economical choice. We were
True.
trying our best to be economical this trip for lots of reasons.
We used a lot of points.
So we used my air miles, specifically my Aeroplan, which is the sort of point system out of our carrier, our national carrier, Air Canada, which has always been the point system that has most rewarded me, to be honest. Maybe because I've set things up accordingly. But
And funnily enough, because I know our listeners like tips, those points serve you better, not for air travel, because it seems you have to pay a supplemental fee on it, but rather if you use them for hotel stays or car rentals.
So I have used them in the past, just so you know, for air travel. I've used them. I used them once to fly to Asia and went first class because it was all on points. And
Sure.
that definitely was a great reward. But generally speaking, we don't wait that long to let them build up. And we use them for car rentals and hotel stays. And because there's no additional taxes. It's just a straight up use your points and then you've got it. You don't have to pay an additional fee or tax or anything, whereas airlines you often do. So that's what we did. So we could have used points probably for Calgary, but we found this tiny house, and obviously it was quite a good price on the Airbnb. So we went for it. And what did you think of the tiny house?
It was charming. It was charming, and cute and quaint and great for 2 days. But anything longer than that may have proved difficult. And our bedroom was on the top floor, so right. So you had a ladder to climb, and then you would be on this platform that had a bed, which was very comfortable, but you were very close.
It was a loft, yeah.
Yeah, loft, thank you.
Yeah. But which is very typical of a tiny house
Sure.
for those like me who follow them and watch them and tour them online and so on. I will say this about this particular tiny house. I do still want a tiny house. That's still part of my sort of fantasy dream.
I want it even less now.
Great, wonderful. But for me, this particular tiny house, it was like a shed garage kind of situation. So it definitely had it was interesting that we were in the city, because being in it, we definitely had that, I don't know how to put it, like a cottagey feel. The walls,
Sure.
There was a lot of, it was interesting, right? Like the walls were plywood,
Right.
kind of unfinished. There was some spiders and that kind of thing.
There's always going to be spiders. Spiders are not going to be.
Yes, that's true. But there were some lovely things about the tiny house too
Sure.
that I really loved. It had a heated floor in the bathroom, so that was pretty fantastic.
I
And the
think-
shower was great.
I think what people should keep in mind is tiny houses are great for tiny people, and I'm
True.
not a tiny person.
Nor
so
am I. So.
It was difficult. So climbing up the ladder to get to the loft bed was fine. It was getting down that I found very difficult, because I would have to sort of lizard my way backwards, or that's what I called it, and then kind of propel my feet over and try to find the ladder with my feet. And that was never fun.
I'm going to say this. Most tiny houses that you look at have a loft space, more often
Sure.
than not. You're sleeping in the sort of upper loft. this loft was more narrow than your average tiny house. I'm going to say that.
Okay.
So laying in the bed, you could put your hand in front of your face and touch the wall without stretching your arm, if that makes sense. Your arm bent would touch, your hand would touch the wall. So it was a more narrow loft than
And
normal.
at 2 a.m. in the morning when I rolled over, I cronked my head.
Yes, there was some cronking.
I cronked it on the ceiling.
On the ceiling. It was very, very easy and almost expected, I would say, to do that. So getting in and out of it was hard because you
Certainly
have to be
that wasn't
vertical.
on the brochure. That was not on the brochure. Expect to cronk your head.
It was. You have to be horizontal to get in and out of it. There's just no other way. So you look like Spider-Man coming in and coming out.
Right. Well, let's get to Calgary and Banff because we're halfway through the episode.
And all we've talked about. Well, maybe this is a two-parter. I don't know. But anyway, so we stayed in this tiny house. It was the experience we have it described. I enjoyed it, but I think 2 days was enough. We went to a wonderful show.
It was wonderful.
It was a show for those who follow you in your podcast. You have a podcast with Daniela Vlaskalik.
It's called Every Place is the Same, if you haven't heard it.
And so she was doing a wonderful show that she had co-written and was performing. It was a solo show. And it is based on the part of the life, anyway, of Dora Maar, who is and was one of Picasso's muses, for lack of a better word, one of his women.
And was an artist in her own right and photographer.
Yeah.
So it was a fascinating look into the life in a certain period of Dora Maar. And Daniela's
Absolutely.
a wonderful performer. So that was great. And we got to hang out with Joel.
She was phenomenal, and the show was wonderful and beautiful and touching. And her partner Joel is a wonderful guy and a great time, and we had a great time with them.
We had a great dinner with him. He knows he's from Calgary, so
we
he's
had
really
wonderful food.
He's just a great guy, and we got to meet Beth, his daughter, and Mike, her partner, and Dinah, Daniela's sister.
Yeah, we got to meet a lot of people in their lives.
It was really lovely.
It's true.
It was really,
That's
really
what
lovely.
happens when you visit someone's city, I think.
And so what did you think of Calgary? Calgary, the city itself.
I loved it.
Right.
I thought it was bright and clean.
Very clean.
There was a lot of sunshine when we were there, and this is what I mean by it auditioned well.
Sure.
Because a sunny, happy city where you only have to wear a jacket is always going to win, when you're trying to figure out if you like it or not.
Anytime we hopped in the car to go somewhere in Calgary and I would type into the GPS, it would be 6 minutes away. So that's what I loved about it. Everything was 6 minutes away.
Yeah, it's a smaller city than maybe even I realized.
Sure.
And easily drivable. I don't know if it's meant to be driven, but I think you'd want a vehicle there probably.
For me, the food was phenomenal.
We had some great food.
So
there.
great.
I don't know how much we want to talk about that.
No, we won't. But if you're looking for a culinary experience, I would say Calgary, and this has been true for over 15 years. Every time I go there, Amanda, it's fantastic. And what's odd is I didn't have any beef while I was there. I had very little beef. I just had other items.
Which is what Alberta is known for those who don't know.
Yeah.
It's cattle country.
So
it felt to me very much like, for those who know more American cities, it was very similar to Denver. Very similar, I would say, as well, to Houston.
Okay.
So sort of greener cities, a lot of people on bicycles, a lot of people with dogs. Of course, it was the weather too, but lots of beautiful streams and rivers and lots of green, really. So
and
it was,
the city
beautiful.
itself, the skyline is very pretty too, I have to say.
It was a beautiful city.
And everyone we met was lovely as well.
They were. There were some wonderful, lovely people. So we had a great time exploring Calgary.
And then we went.
A lot of things were closed, though. All the major attractions that we were told, go check this out,
happened to be closed.
2 were closed and 1 had moved.
Right.
So we didn't have a ton of luck with that.
But it didn't stop us from having a great time.
But it didn't matter. I mean, we weren't really there to see one other than the show. We were there more just to explore. So we took it all in stride. And
then we hopped in the car.
We did.
And we drove to Banff.
And that was incredible.
And Banff is a destination. So for our listeners who aren't in Canada and are looking for a place to go for a short visit, but it being impactful and beautiful, I cannot recommend doing Calgary and Banff and Lake Louise. And it's just spectacular.
The area. Now, Lake Louise is one of the lakes surrounding Banff, and it's probably the most famous. But there are a couple, which we learned.
You're in the Rockies. It is gorgeous. Banff itself is a charming, charming place.
The mountains are stunning. As someone who did not grow up around Rocky Mountains, they are stunning. They're stunning, wherever you go and you see them, but certainly in Alberta, they're stunning.
I would recommend and we have a lot of listeners in Calgary. Calgary has always been a city. Yeah. Alberta actually is a city that really enjoys this podcast. So thank you to them. You have a beautiful province, and I can't wait to come back. And we just got home.
Maybe we can do a podcast extra and talk about the more specific things, like the restaurants and stuff if you want.
I just wanted to highlight one restaurant. It's a fondue restaurant that I loved called the Grizzly House. And it has that 1970s restaurant feel to it. I had just such a great time there.
So what he means by that is it was very, very dark. I don't know. The 70s loved dark, cavernous restaurants.
How could you not?
The fondue itself was incredible.
Lots of wood.
Wood everywhere. There are telephones by each table if you'd like to make a call.
More than one by each seat.
Each seat has its own sort of telephone, which was intriguing. I'm not sure who needs them or why you would call.
I think it was a thing in the 70s where you could call different tables.
Right.
And chat with them or say hello.
I know in the musical Cabaret, which takes place in the 30s.
In Berlin.
In Berlin, every table, that was a thing. All the tables had telephones and you could call to other tables and talk to people. So that was table to table, but I don't know why you would sit and call like your aunt at a table. But
why wouldn't you?
I mean, obviously we all have phones.
When was the last time you called your aunt? Exactly. So let me say this.
Okay.
So we had that fondue, but we drove around Banff. There were some highlights, and then we went to Lake Louise, and it was gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Beautiful, gorgeous. And then, Amanda, I was tired.
We were told Lake Louise, and on the same sort of road is a place called Lake Moraine.
Moraine.
No, but it's it's Mourine, isn't it?
No.
So this has been a thing on the trip where I say it wrong. So, okay. Anyway, Moraine, Lake Moraine, we'll say. And
we went there. We tried to go there, but it was closed because of avalanche threats.
Because we were in avalanche country, for sure. So
I don't know if you call it avalanche country. I just think
the time of year. There were a lot of signs.
Right. But
that said, beware the avalanche.
I know, but I don't think there's such a thing as avalanche country. Sounds like a...
Well, if you're in the mountains and it's snowy and there's avalanches, would one not say that it's avalanche country?
I don't know. I don't think so. But okay, let's just say we were in avalanche country. It just sounds so nefarious.
I'm just saying, if that's not avalanche country, I don't know what country is.
Sure.
Nepal? I don't know.
The Alps? There's avalanches anywhere there's mountains that have snow on it.
Exactly.
Okay.
My point.
All right. So we couldn't go to Lake Moraine.
So at the information center at Lake Louise, which is sort of a little tiny town. So in the mountains, there are these tiny little villages, right? Sort of dotted. Very quaint.
Canmore was beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, they're just these little mountain towns.
Yeah.
And
Field,
BC was amazing. We drove through that. So anyway, at Lake Louise, she said, why don't you go to Emerald Lake since Lake Moraine, did I say right? Moraine is closed. And it's only about 30 minutes away, and it's beautiful. And but you'll cross the border over to British Columbia. We're about 10 minutes away from British Columbia, from Kicking Horse, British Columbia,
right.
Kicking Horse Pass. So I kind of got to... Now, I've been to British Columbia many times, and so have you.
Yes.
So it wasn't like going to...
Somewhere new,
but not that area. I mean, we lived in British Columbia for a little while.
And it must be said, British Columbia, as its license plate states, is beautiful. Mm-hmm. But we hadn't been to British Columbia close to Alberta. So Amanda's like, let's go to British Columbia and see this area.
Which we did.
And it was beautiful. And I was complaining.
It was 3:00 and you were tired and you wanted to take a nap. And our hotel in Banff wasn't ready until 3 anyway.
True.
So I just said, why don't we, instead of seeing Banff and spending a lot of time, because we'll have all day tomorrow, let's go see Lake Louise. And then I was like, let's keep going and see this Emerald Lake, which you weren't so into, but I dragged you, and it was beautiful.
It was gorgeous. So as a little side trip for anyone who wants to go to and should go to Banff, if you have the time, definitely go see Emerald Lake in BC, which is about a half hour away if you're in the Lake Louise area. And it is totally worth it. The water was an emerald green.
Mm-hmm.
It was gorgeous. There's a little town called Field along the way, which was fun to. We just kind of did a loop-to-loop circle in it and try not to disturb anyone, but really got a look at what this small town in the Rockies is like.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And then we drove back.
And
We saw a
bear,
bear, a black bear, which was amazing.
a black bear.
On the side of the road. So that was incredible.
It's fascinating because so many people have this impression of Canada that there's a lot of wildlife, and there is. But not every place has the wildlife that you expect. So, for example, we live in Toronto. We don't see these larger animals that represent the wildlife of Canada. And then when you're in areas where you do see them, you're like, oh, yes, of course. This is why people have this impression.
Exactly. This trip for me was, so as a little girl, when I'd go to Epcot Center or whatever at Disney World, there is their version of Canada, right? And
in the Canada Pavilion of Epcot, should be said.
well, in the World Pavilion of Epcot,
the
they
world.
have different countries represented.
But you're specifically talking about the Canada Pavilion, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In that, it's that thing of like wood and logs and
Mountains and
it's a Rocky Mountain kind of outpost. And that's never been completely the Canada that I've known. I grew up near the ocean,
sure.
parts of it, certainly. But this trip was that thing. This trip was the black bear at the side of the road, a fondue in a log cabin.
Lots of
which
deer.
I know fondue isn't. Elk, driving through. Deer everywhere and not afraid to just graze right in front of you. I mean,
they weren't skittish. They were like, you're in deer country, never mind avalanche country.
So clean air, all of that. It was that Canadian experience.
And it was wonderful.
It was.
Well, as we close this episode, I will say once again, thank you to our listeners in Alberta. If we got anything incorrect, which I'm sure we did, please let us know. And I can't wait to get back. And I want to invite all our listeners, if you're looking for a place to go and you have 4 days and you're thinking, well, it's too far to go to Europe or Australia, let me say, go to Calgary and Banff. And if you're from very far away and you're like, is it worth all the time travel to go to Calgary and Alberta? I would say yes.
Absolutely. They're only about an hour and a half apart from each other, just so people know if they're planning a trip. Yeah, a drive, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening, and thank you for being part of the podcast today, Amanda. And to everyone else, we hope you were able to listen and sleep without crunking your head.